So what we'd like to model now is.
Oh, do you want me to start this too?
Or
we just need one.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Sorry. So what we'd like to model now is the story sharing, final step of the story sharing process. So Dr. Moore and I have exchanged stories where we've told each other in first person from our own actual true perspectives what we went through, and each of us has taken notes and is prepared to retell the story back to the other as if we were that person. So the trick with narrative form storytelling is similar to things you've probably done in the past, where you have to take on the first person perspective, the I of the story, and sort of almost pretend it's yours. And the idea is that the story gets shared with the wider community, and it's understood that one person has shared a story with another, but then something happens, and there is some brain science research on this, that process of kind of inhabiting the I, certainly invokes empathy, hopefully in the reader slash story sharer. But I believe there's even more potential there for, a deeper understanding to emerge of the kind of the narrative process, how we, even in our own lives have to reconstruct experiences and, reshape them and make decisions, whether they're totally conscious or not, about which details to emphasize, how to restate. So I'm going to do this on the spot. I might, this might not be perfect, but it's meant to be an exhibit of how to go about this. Thank you. So this is a story of my first kind of experience of what you might say is recognition of my mortality and certainly a deeper understanding of what true anxiety may look like. This was back when I was a student at the famed Oxford University in England, studying my love, Shakespeare, and working on what potentially became my dissertation project for my doctorate. And it's important to know my father had died in the middle of my studies here, so that happened, and that was certainly relevant, maybe in some way to how I was feeling disconnected from family at home. I was working, studying abroad, even though I was quite happy there. There was a sense of loneliness that was rooted in some family losses that were present at the time. But I was still loving what I was doing. I was enjoying my studies, and I was living the life of a monastic scholar, so to speak, which many people may envy. The right to study what you love and spend time in such a famous institution as Bodleian Library and Somerville College, some of these great institutions, part of the Oxford system. So I got a job. I had to make some money in the free time, and I was working as a secretary, filing papers in the university office, and I liked it. It was enjoyable. It was a very solitary task, but there was nothing. I didn't mind it. There was plenty to keep me occupied, and a few bucks in my pocket, not a bad thing. But I remember this one day distinctly, a Saturday in February around 10 a.m. And I was alone, and there was really no one there to bother me, nor was there anyone there to assist me, because what happened was incredibly sudden and frightening. I felt this severe pain and discomfort in my right side that kind of began at my neck and went down my arms and pretty much the whole side of my body, in addition to my left arm too, were tingling and feeling very uncomfortable. I really didn't know what was happening. I suspected, as anyone might, is this a stroke? Is this something very serious medical event that I need to get immediate attention for? I didn't know what was happening. I was in my late 20s. This sort of health event would be totally outside the norm for someone in my condition or my life at that point. And I was feeling very alone and uncertain how to help myself. So with this feeling in both arms, worsening, in addition to some weirdness in my jaw, I decided to get out of there and go to the doctor on campus and just ask him what's going on. I had really no idea. I didn't really see anything disturbing, or the doctor really didn't see anything disturbing after taking my vitals. There were no clear signs other than elevated blood pressure, which was kind of normal for the fright I was experiencing. But otherwise, the doctor in very English fashion said, "Oh, you'll be fine. Go drink some water, and as they say, keep calm and carry on, so to speak." So I did. I trusted the authorities and went home, did some laundry, but the pain didn't go away. The experience was still vividly present. And at that point, later in the day, anxiety took over. I was genuinely worried, and by around 7 p.m., I decided to go to the hospital, the real hospital, Radcliffe Hospital. And who am I? I'm a dumb American. I don't know how this works. This sort of institution is new to me, and what I did know is, a lot about the 19th century, institutional medicine that was practiced then. So the scene was straight out of Dickens, you would say. It was very scary to me, and it was really ghastly to be in there. Though I was treated again, they took some diagnostic, or they took some basic tests of my vitals. My blood pressure was significantly elevated, 150 over 100, I recall, and I was unbelievably upset. But still, the docs needed further information. There wasn't really a clear diagnosis, and I'm left, going into day 2 without an answer to why I'm experiencing such a, really terrifying event. They gave me some sleeping pills and said, come back. Well, in typical, again, the English kind of stereotypical fashion, though I'm sure we get this in the States too. But eventually, the next day, or later on, I got some actual testing that did reveal that an artery in my vertebrae had dissected and basically burst.
Mm-hmm.
And I was bleeding internally and obviously experiencing not an aneurysm or a stroke, but something as pretty much as close as you can get to such a terrible event. And it wasn't good. It was causing huge vascular problems, and it was true. I was clearly experiencing something that did have a diagnosis and needed to be addressed. I felt even more alone about hearing this news. My family is in the States, and I'm without any sort of clear community to support me. However, it was a lovely woman, Norma
McManaway.
The secretary of the college, who probably had many tests and hats to wear, but she went out of her way to be with me and take me to all the tests I had to attend. Meanwhile, my studies had fallen awry. I wasn't even working anymore on my love of Shakespeare, and was having problems even thinking and reading, doing the basic skills of a graduate student that would be expected. My official diagnosis was a case of vertebral artery dissection, and I ended up on a ward with people with pretty severe neurological difficulties, such as multiple sclerosis, and you can imagine, people who were truly, in need of medical attention, as in fact I was. They give me some anti-seizure medications, and still it's the technique was, take it easy, don't work too hard, but still the pain would come back, and I really realized, after a few weeks or so that I would have to go home. My studies couldn't continue. I really couldn't do what I came there to do, and that was very sad. Unfortunately, I'm living on an island in the North Atlantic, and I wanted to go home, but I couldn't fly home. The doctor was worried that the pressure inside a typical airline flight would further damage the weakened arteries in my neck. So I had to take what was known as the QE2, which is a giant ship, and it was sort of a popular tourist sort of means of transportation, especially for people who loved stories of like the Titanic and ships that crashed in the rough North Atlantic seas. So I guess the good news was I waited till April when the sea is calm enough after the winter that you can actually take a ship across the Atlantic in a relatively safe fashion. But as you can imagine, it was hardly an easy crossing. So 6 days on this trip, seasickness, struggling with the medications and trying to. Meanwhile, people are there to party and to celebrate and talk about, how fun it was to remember the Titanic, and I'm in this horrible condition. There's something humorous in it. Waiting to get home. Finally, though, I did arrive, and the sight of sailing into New York Harbor, which relatively few people ever get the chance to do, other than immigrants to America. Seeing Statue of Liberty was incredible. I felt I had arrived again, and I knew that it was just a matter of time before I would be back within the friendly confines of the community I grew up with and the family that I love. It was about 5 a.m. in fact when the sight of New York City came into view and the sun was rising, and I could only imagine what those immigrants felt over the centuries, seeing such a welcome sight after a transatlantic journey that QE2 or not would have been challenging. I knew that I would eventually disembark, as I said, and somehow I knew I would be safe finally after this ordeal that overall lasted at least 2 months of that time, and really was a turning point in my life that took a lot out of me. And I think it's important to note this wasn't a story that is, keep calm and carry on or brush yourself off. It was an encounter with mortality and a recognition of one's how important and precious one's health is. And I know I survived, but my anxiety remains ever present. And there's this constant sense that such things are out of our control, and it's a legacy of anxiety, in fact, that stays with me to this day.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Oh, thank you.
That was
It's always
great,
nice to
actually.